Hello, I'm Don Mooers, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. In the 1980s, a doctor living here in Montgomery County had an amazing idea, and he threw out what would it be like to envision a world without polio. Bruce Fowler, local Rotarian, member of the Rotary International, will tell us how close we've become to achieving that goal that started right here in Montgomery County. Montgomery County currently is embroiled in a conflict, another kind of conflict. This is a conflict about how liquor will be sold throughout our county. Jane DeWinter, who comments for this program on a regular basis, is here to explain. The Committee for Montgomery Annual Breakfast is close at hand. Be held on December 16th at 7 a.m. Steve Simon, a member of the committee, will tell us about the program, what's entailed, what we should look forward to this year, as well as the history of an event that has become the unofficial start of the Maryland State Legislative Session. And finally, the Montgomery County Food Council deals with food from the farm to the table and all the details in between. Susan Callahan, a member of the council as well as a professor at the universities at Shady Grove, is here to comment. Bruce.
Glad to be back.
Wow, you know, Montgomery County is full of such wonderful people, world-renowned to local folks. We don't know all the things that our neighbors do, but I'm so proud to learn that Montgomery County is where the eradication of polio idea came from. Tell us the story.
Okay, the story is there's a physician named John Sever, who was an NIH scientist, and it's important to remember that NIH is kind of the Valhalla of biomedical research in the world, and it's right here. Anyway, he was also a Rotarian, and he became the district governor of Central Maryland, which is District 7620, should you want to know that. And he came in contact with the president of all of Rotary International. And there are about 1.2 million of us worldwide. And that president said, do you have a good project that we could get into for the whole organization? And John said, yes, I do. It's eradication of polio.
Wow. Just with that idea and that discussion.
Well, this is at the time when Dr. Salk and Dr. Sabin had gotten forward with their vaccines, so it was doable. And so Rotary picked it up, and in the since about 1979, 1980, it has supported both in terms of people, but also in terms of dollars. About 1.5 billion, I think, has been put in.
Well, Bruce, as a Rotarian here, congratulations to Rotary on this. This is fantastic.
Well, it's an even bigger win than that. That it's more than Rotary. It's more than NIH. It's basically a partnership between a government agency and people trying to do public health, and a private altruistic organization.
Here in the United States, people who are younger, perhaps than, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but younger than me, may not even know what the impact, if you have polio, what's the impact,
very good
what's
point.
the
Good
health
question.
ramifications, what makes this something critical to eradicate?
This until the vaccine came along, was an absolutely devastating disease. And basically people would lose muscular function, and many of them would die if they weren't put in iron lungs, if anyone knows what that is. This vaccine turned the tide. And what Rotary did was to jump in on this and use its network to get sponsorship in other countries.
How was it declared a success? I mean, have we eradicated polio in the world?
In this hemisphere.
In this hemisphere.
There are 2 countries left that still have polio, Afghanistan and Pakistan, for the same reason. And it doesn't have anything to do with the vaccine itself. It has to do with some political unrest and them killing the vaccination teams.
How did the Rotarians make the decision? I mean, how is the process going from we want to do this to really calling it success? What was your process? Was there an education? Was there?
The process basically is, Rotary is a very highly structured organization, and it has chapters, clubs in every country in the world. And they're represented up the line to the president, who changes once a year. This particular president, when Dr. Sever brought this forward was a gentleman named Clem Brunoff from Australia. And he convinced him that this was a great project for Rotary to take up. Brunoff took it to the board, and the board approved it. And they said, this will be our project. So it's called Polio Plus, and the goal is full eradication of polio in the whole planet.
Bruce, what other types of projects? This seems like such a huge endeavor and such a large scope, but what other types of things would the Rotary on an international basis be looking at?
Well, they look at all kinds of things. We have there are grants that are given to individual clubs to work on a smaller scale than this in developing countries, for example. Treating water is one of them. Education, maternal health. These are target areas. But the Polio Plus is the seminal project of all of Rotary.
What is Montgomery County? What are Montgomery County Rotarians working on right now?
Well, I know there's water projects. Is that
Water
what you
projects?
had here? And
Yeah.
also, I know working, one of the things I'm very happy about, Sierra Leone, I was a Peace Corps volunteer, focused on Rotarian Magazine on helping victims of amputation during the Blood Diamonds War. So Bruce, I mean, we have about a minute left, but what Rotary does is so fantastic. What makes you excited about Rotary especially?
The positivity of it and working with people who are equally engaged to try to improve their community. In this case, it's our community, but it also has a global reach, and so we have ways to do that. There's a mechanism in place, namely the structure of Rotary International.
Is there any reason why somebody should not become a Rotarian? We have about 30 seconds left.
No. If you want to contribute to your community, that was Dr. Sever's point why he joined. He wanted to contribute positively, and he lived here in Montgomery County. So that's the reason you do it.
So paying it forward and working locally and with world reach. Bruce, thank you. I look forward to having you back again.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Happy to be here.
Lena Barnes, so we go from polio vaccine to we go to another kind of vaccine.
You just call me Linda.
I'm not sorry. Jane, I apologize. So Jane, we go from vaccine to another kind of, we go to firewater.
Yes,
And
firewater.
Montgomery County has been in
yes,
charge
yes.
of
Fireball
firewater
water.
since Prohibition days, right?
Oh yeah.
The end of Prohibition.
Yeah.
So Jane, what's going on?
Well, there's been with all of the county controls wholesale liquor price sales as well as retail liquor sales, and so there's always been some level of pushback, and which is I think been increasing a little bit with the desire of the restaurant community to have access to larger wine lists and beer lists, especially a lot of like the local microbreweries and wineries springing up, things that aren't
So
necessarily.
Montgomery County, just like every other county in the country, has the control by the government of liquor, right? Every other county in the country?
I'm not absolutely sure that every county has that they control like regulations, but
Right.
no, not every county does the actual sales or wholesale.
This is the only full ABC county there is, I think, alcoholic beverage control in America.
We're the only one in America.
Well, maybe countywide. There
Right.
are there are states that
Sure.
that handle everything. I mean, New Hampshire doesn't have an income tax because they have a liquor store.
On the main border.
Yeah.
So on the Massachusetts border. So
Yeah.
what's going on? I mean, isn't this
Well,
a
so-
simple thing, or are there tax issues with
Well,
this?
there's a number of different issues. First of all, everybody who works in the liquor distribution and administration and in the liquor stores is a county employee with a salary structure, benefits,
And members of the
guarantees.
union, right?
Members of the union, most of
Okay.
them. They're represented by McGeo, whether or not they're a member themselves. And so they're, good sort of mid-level jobs,
Okay.
and they'll have a pension, health benefits, et cetera, something which people in the county generally care about. But there's also that the liquor control runs a surplus most of the time, and that's been averaging between $20 and $30 million a year. So that goes mostly towards debt service in the county. So that's basically, comes off the top and goes to help out the county
Jane, that's
budget.
one of the biggest arguments to keep the system that we have right now is the money, though. But I think there's people out there that think we have a $5 billion budget in Montgomery County, $25 to $30 million. It's a lot of money, but in a $5 billion budget, makes people think there's got to be other ways to sort of make up that deficit. and not be in the liquor business.
Well, one of the ways is going to be selling liquor licenses. I've personally bought one-day licenses. The county makes money on licenses. There really isn't any, I mean, talking about the reasons why we can't do it, I think we should talk about the reasons why we should.
Well, I'm not on either side of the argument right here. I'm going to tell you what the case, what
Okay,
the
so we got
situation is.
money
There
and
is-
jobs. So what's on the other side?
Well, there is the fact that there's, it can be hard to get certain liquor, mostly wines and beers, and it can be hard to get them quickly, so that a lot of the restaurant community feels like they're really losing out to
Well, even-
DC and other jurisdictions.
Even producers. We have a producer here in Montgomery County, and when Denison's opened in Silver Spring, or Dogfish Head, they couldn't even get their product into the DLC. So the distribution for the producers is even harder.
Right.
So
Right, so that's difficult. But so anyway, what's been happening lately is that the council took up a bill
Right.
and that to allow wholesalers to purchase, I mean wholesalers like a restaurant anyway, not individual people purchasing, to purchase through private
Okay.
private places for specialized, sort of what they'd call specialized wine and beer and liquor.
Okay.
And so that has to go before any kind of liquor legislation has to be approved at the state level.
Okay.
However, so that's right there what's on the table, but just last week was introduced, or was announced that it was going to be introduced by Delegate Bill Frick, Senator Rich Manalino, that they were going to, in conjunction and collaboration with the comptroller, Peter Francho, introduce something that would allow complete privatization.
You know, it's very interesting because those three played very prominent roles at the Total Wine and Beverage kickoff of the expanded headquarters in Bethesda, the largest, I believe, family-based wine wholesaler and beer and wholesaler in the country. Do you think there's any relationship between their being there and Total Wine really pushing hard? We got less than a minute here.
Well, yes, I did read in the newspaper that there may in fact be a connection between members of Bill Frick's family and that that industry. So, you know, that could be it. But I think also, I mean, Delegate Frick represents Bethesda, which is, you know, a restaurant hub in the county.
You're saying it's restaurants as opposed to Total Wine? Pushing this thing?
Oh, well, restaurants
I think
are
restaurants
also,
are definitely
Yeah,
pushing
but
yeah.
restaurant
I know
Frick, yeah.
restaurateurs who are
Okay.
pushing
Yes.
it.
The
They
number of
have,
licenses they can
Oh,
have,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's very,
I mean,
yeah.
consumers want to buy
Yeah.
beer on a Sunday in a grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a hot topic.
We
ahead.
gotta leave it there with a hot topic, and we can come back and talk more, hopefully another time when it's gone through.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Donald Trump to get
And we're
canceled.
back. Steve, Simon, thank you for being here. This
Good
is
to be
great.
back.
We've got the Committee for Montgomery annual legislative breakfast coming up.
We do.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is before we talk about what's going on December 16th?
Sure. Committee for Montgomery, this is the advocacy organization for Montgomery County interests, primarily in Annapolis. That's really the focus. That's why it started. It started about 26 years ago. A group of folks came together and they said, we really need to get out there and kind of compete with the greater Baltimore committees of the world. We need to make a voice for Montgomery County in Annapolis. And so it's all different interests. It's civic, education, business, labor, all the organizations come together. We have a 40-member board of directors that kind of run the organization. And we have our largest event of the year, our main event of the year, that really is, it's kind of seen as the unofficial kickoff of the legislative season every year, and that's the Committee for Montgomery Legislative Breakfast on December 16th.
And politicians from all over the state just flock to
This
this.
is this will be the single largest gathering of elected officials in Montgomery County at any one time all year, this breakfast. This is a power breakfast for sure. We'll have about 800 people there, represented by a lot of corporations that are sponsors and behind it. But we have a really neat program this year. It's different. Usually there will be like one keynote speaker.
Well, tell us about what the program's going to be.
This year, there's a heavy focus on regional economic development issues as a
Right.
part of it. Because the whole thing, we all know, we don't want to go back into the recession that we're in. We need to keep the strength.
I need to stop you right there
Sure.
for a second. I believe there's a website coming up. Is the
Yeah,
website
yeah.
for Committee for Montgomery where they can learn more about the breakfast? everything else?
www.committeeformontgomery.org
Okay.
is the website.
Okay.
But it's regional economic development is the focus. So we have a panel this year of Ike Leggett, our county executive,
Right.
along with Rashawn Baker,
Prince George's County,
County executive,
right.
and Muriel Bowser, who a lot of people in Montgomery County see on television but haven't had a chance to see in a context, having a discussion about this. When you think about all the issues that are coming together, like who's going to get the FBI or what's going to happen with Metro, we have a lot of common issues that we have to work on together. So that's it. And it's going to be moderated by a person who once hosted shows back
Right
here,
here, sat in this
Bruce
very
DuPoit
chair.
over at News
Right.
Channel 8.
And
So
a
it's going to be a great
different program sat in this chair.
That's right.
Yeah, Bruce DuPoit is one of the most famous local television personalities. What a great side. And I think, weren't both Rashern and Muriel students of Ike's at Howard Law School, I believe?
Yep, you hear a lot of stories about that, and we expect a little bit of fun conversation there, no question. And Muriel Bowser, what a lot of people don't know, at one point worked for Montgomery County government, so that's an interesting part of it as
I
well.
didn't know that
That's
either.
interesting.
That's
Fantastic.
And actually, I think for as somebody who's been to the breakfast for years and years and years, the biggest news this year was that it's on a Wednesday.
Yes, it's going to be one. It has moved around at times. The one thing I can tell you that doesn't change, though, it's early. If you're not there
Yeah.
at 7 o'clock, sort of power networking,
Oh, yeah.
then you're going to miss some of the best parts of it. So we encourage everybody to get there real early.
So
for
is
this.
it mostly networking, or do you have some goals and outcomes that you want to walk away from this? Or?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is the time when we lay out the legislative priorities for the committee for Montgomery, and some of those are similar to the county governments, and some are not. It's really, but it's based on the views of all of these disparate groups that come together: the business organizations, the labor groups, civic groups, education, and we put together a legislative priority list and kind of put that before our delegation, if you will, to lead.
And much of it's
Annapolis.
economic and education, transportation are really, continue to be the
Yeah, and
the big.
economic development is a big sort of centerpiece of the priorities list.
Well, and
today.
I always think it's interesting the method Committee for Montgomery has for taking a position.
Yes. Takes a very high threshold
Right.
rate, and there's a lot of discussion about it. Takes 85% membership to support a position. We have one very key position we'll work very hard on that we put forth last year, and sometimes it takes a couple of years to get something done in Annapolis, and it really has to do with increasing voter participation.
Right.
You recall the last election, it was very, very low rates, and so we're looking to get a blue ribbon commission put together, and it's going to be a real priority project.
Well, I think League of Women Voters, you're working in conjunction because they're also pushing for that as well. I think anyone who cares about the future of democracy in this community in America, that is a hot burning issue. We've got about a minute left. More on Committee for Montgomery. Why are you involved?
Well,
yourself.
I'm with the company Van Eperen, so I'm one of the small business interests at the table. I have a long history of just being involved in Montgomery County, lifelong Montgomery County resident, so I find a lot of it interesting. But I also feel like I'm there to also represent that small business viewpoint, which is just one of the many groups represented, as I say, a whole coalition of folks.
Are you confident that the 3 or more issues coming forward in Annapolis that we'll see some success in fulfilling those?
I mean, we're always working it. Everything happens in Annapolis that'll surprise you once it happens. You go into a session, you think you know what's going to happen, and everything goes upside down. With some of the issues that we're talked about, we're not really our direct issues, but we know there's going to be a lot of discussion on liquor issues
Yeah.
and other things. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see what the session is.
And they'll be sampling at every table?
No,
Thanks,
no,
Steve.
no.
That's great. And we look forward.
Little early in the
I'll be
morning.
there. I'll see you.
Yeah.
I'll see you a little bit before 7
Look
on the
forward to it.
16th of December. Susan, welcome back.
Thank you.
So you wear so many hats.
I do.
And
I try
so,
not to wear any hats, but I represent a lot of people.
So the Food Council, Montgomery County Food Council, tell us about what this is all about.
Well, the Food Council is a group of private citizens. We are led by a Montgomery County employee, but we are a bunch of interested people about the food systems in Montgomery County, from growth to the farms and the farmers, to producers, food recovery, food economy, who's in the business of food, serving food, selling food, environmental impact. You know, we have a lot of waste from the food in Montgomery County,
Sure.
and how do we put it back into the soil to make more soil available? So it's a pretty diverse group of people, and also teaching kids and adults how to eat well, food literacy.
Well, and I would think food literacy also includes where does food come from?
Exactly.
Because, I mean, how depressing is it when you get kids who have never been on a farm before and think the food comes out of the grocery store, somehow magically is manufactured.
And not understanding I teach college students, and I do take them to a lot of farms as well, and it's interesting that this generation doesn't know where food comes from. So, you know, the Food Council does support initiatives about people who are working for food literacy. We do support initiatives, one of them being a food hub, about how do we understand food hubs in Montgomery County.
As you're talking about food hubs and literacy and everything else, there's a website where people can go to
Yes.
and learn more?
It's MOCO Food Council, MOCO foodcouncil.org.
Okay.
And so there are 5 working groups. I've talked a little bit about food literacy. And what we do is we support what's going on in the county. We are a center point for converging all of the interests about food in our county. You know, why do we get, how can we get more healthy food available? How do we support, you know, our business owners, the people who want to start businesses in Montgomery County?
Susan, food hub. You use that expression. And
Good
what is
question.
a food hub?
Well, there's a lot of different kinds of food hubs. The one that we're working on right now in food economy is we're trying to get the county farmers to work with the larger stakeholders, such as maybe Shady Grove Adventist, maybe Sodexo, maybe Marriott, to try and get the farmers in our county to get food to those large stakeholders. We're often, many of us are going to farmers markets. We're buying local food. We're keeping the food dollars in the county. We're supporting our local farmers. But our food hub, the study that we're doing right now, is talking about how do we get the Montgomery counties to sell to Montgomery County businesses.
So a lot of,
Do you have an emphasis on food, well, call it food safety, packaging, and the use of pesticides and other things like that? Is there an effort to try to promote that?
Right. Our environmental impact working group would be working on that right now. And in fact, today, there's a group of 40 farmers and business people talking about what is the environmental impact of pesticides and composting. How do we keep food out of the landfill? How do we turn food that's not consumed into seeds and compost to grow more food for the people of Montgomery County? But it's very diverse. It's a really interesting group of people. We have chefs, we have business owners, we have farmers, people that interested citizens.
How does somebody get on this council?
Well, there are 5 working groups, and you can volunteer to be on a working group. We just closed the annual intake of council members. We have 19 council members, and they represent everybody in the county. And I didn't even talk about food recovery. There's a huge push for recovering food that would otherwise go to waste. 78,000 pounds of food go into landfills. So that's environmental impact, but it's also 78,000 pounds of foods that could probably be repurposed.
sure.
So it's a very diverse group of people working on some very important issues.
As you're looking ahead, I mean, one of the things that you're talking about, if you're looking at production for some of the larger stakeholders, so the hospitals and other institutions, then you're talking about having the farmers produce for the needs. Their market then becomes these large producers.
Right.
Are farmers in Montgomery County largely they're in the ag reserve, our wonderful 100,000 acre jewel for Montgomery County, Royce Hansen and that legacy. We've seen success in the farmers moving to
Slowly.
produce?
We have some very good representatives. I think the Silver Diner chain has done a really good job of sourcing locally. And I personally have a fondness for their food and for what they've done to show that food can be. I think there's
About
some
45 seconds
resistance.
left.
I think there's some resistance, like we don't have enough farms to supply. But I think there are the second generation and third generation farmers who are now realizing that they want to do this. You know,
Right.
It takes a little convincing, and I think the extension agents and a lot of people are pushing to say it can be done.
Well, the sort of like the lore or the common belief up there was that commodity farming was really the way. If you wanted to be able to make money or earn a living on a farm, you had to do commodity, corn, soybeans, that kind of stuff,
Right.
as opposed to what you might call truck farming, which it's harder to.
Well, and we need more. We don't produce enough food for our county. Well, there's not enough tabletop crops, but we're making an effort anyway.
Well, and the diversity here, we've got so many different foods that can be produced for every community, every in this great mosaic. Susan, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank all of you for joining me. It's been a great show, and thank all of you for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, that's my name, and I invite you to come back again next week at this very same time.